Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are digging into a really tough topic, gender-based violence. We're not just going to look at its devastating impact, but also try to understand its deep-seated causes, and maybe most importantly, the incredible coordinated systems that have been built to fight it.
Let's just start with one number, 60%. Think about that. That's how many women who experience physical violence from a partner then go on to suffer from depression. And right away, that tells you this isn't just about physical harm. It's a profound public health crisis that leaves these deep, invisible psychological scars.
So, to really get why an issue like this is so pervasive, we have to look past the symptoms, right? We have to dig way down into the social foundations where the stuff really takes root.
And you know, this famous quote from the philosopher Simone de Beauvoir, it just gets right to the heart of it. What she was arguing is that the idea of being a woman isn't just about biology. It's something that society constructs through a whole lifetime of expectations and norms and unwritten rules. And that brings us to a really vital distinction, which sociologist Ann Oakley brought into the conversation. On one hand, you have sex, which is, our biological makeup, male or female. But then you have social gender, and that's totally different. That's about the unequal roles, the expectations, and the power dynamics that society attaches to masculinity and femininity. And that inequality, that's the key. So, how does this social construction thing actually work? Well, sociologist Joan Acker broke it down into 5 interconnected processes. It all starts with how we create distinctions in our big institutions, think work, family. Then you've got symbols and media constantly reinforcing those differences. In our day-to-day interactions, we subtly perform these dynamics of power and submission. All of this then shapes our own individual identities, and eventually, the whole thing just gets baked into our social structures, and the cycle continues.
And this system of inequality, it creates the perfect breeding ground for gender-based violence. Back in its 1993 declaration, the United Nations defined it as any act of violence based on gender that results in, or is even just likely to result in, physical, sexual, or psychological harm. And it doesn't matter if it's happening in public or behind closed doors.
Now, this kind of violence is so often hidden behind these myths that frankly blame the victim. You hear the one that says, oh, it only happens in poor families. The reality? This is a cross-class crime. It happens everywhere. Or that really insidious idea that she must have provoked it. The reality is violence is always a choice made by the abuser to have control. No one ever deserves to be abused.
And the consequences, wow, they just ripple outward. I mean, beyond the immediate physical danger, there are these devastating effects on mental health, depression, anxiety, you name it. Then there's the economic damage, which can crush a survivor's ability to work. And of course, there's a huge social cost. It erodes family stability and can impact a community for generations.
But, and this is so important, that is not where this story ends, not by a long shot. In response to this crisis, a really powerful, coordinated effort has been built up over decades, both around the world and right now our own communities.
And here's something that's just vital to understand. The help that's available today, it didn't just appear out of thin air. It is the direct result of a structured, global movement. It was built piece by piece through decades of advocacy and policy, all designed to create a real, tangible safety net for survivors. You can actually trace the big moments of this global effort. It really started getting formal traction way back in 1979 when the UN adopted a convention to eliminate discrimination against women. Then, a huge step in 1993, the Vienna Conference officially called gender violence what it is, a human rights violation. That was followed up in 94 with a special rapporteur to monitor it globally, and then the 1995 Beijing Conference created this powerful platform for action that's still influential today.
So what does all that international framework stuff actually look like on the ground? Well, it's designed to deliver real, tangible help, and it's organized around 3 core pillars of support.
The first pillar, it's all about healing the invisible wounds. We're talking about psychosocial support. This means counseling to address trauma, help to rebuild self-esteem, and ultimately empowering survivors to regain control over their own lives. It's about making that shift from just surviving to actually thriving.
Next up, the second pillar is legal support, and this is absolutely critical. It makes sure survivors are informed of their rights, that they can get legal aid, and that they're supported through what can be a really complex and scary judicial process, like filing for a protective order. It's about making the justice system a tool for safety, not just another source of fear.
And the third pillar is practical support.
This is about addressing those immediate, urgent needs. This can be anything from providing a safe shelter for a woman and her kids, to connecting them with social services, or helping them find a path to being economically independent. It's about creating stability right in the middle of a crisis.
So how do all these pillars connect in the real world? Well, the brilliant thing is that all of this support is often accessible through a single, confidential point of contact. In Greece, for example, the national SOS helpline is 15900. One call to that number can be the gateway to this entire network of psychosocial, legal, and practical help. So when you see this whole support structure in place, you have to ask, what's the ultimate goal here? Because it's about so much more than just responding to a crisis. It's about actively, intentionally building a future that's free from this violence. And really, this is the fundamental takeaway. This entire network exists for one reason: to make sure that no one has to face violence alone. It's built to transform private pain into a public demand for change. And that's why, breaking the silence, it isn't just an act of courage. It is the very first step toward building a safer world for everyone.
And that leaves us with one final thought to reflect on. We've seen the problem, and we've seen the incredible response systems that have been built. But support is, by its nature, a reaction. So the question becomes, what role does each and every one of us play in challenging the social norms, in challenging those gender inequalities, to prevent the violence from ever happening in the first place?